Meine Damen und Herren, bitte einen Willkommenapplaus für René Redzepi und seine rechte Hand Thomas, der aus Deutschland stammt.
Hello. My name is René Redzepi. And this is Thomas Friebel.
Hello.
Thomas is from Germany, and he's my sous chef. Okay, so I was here 3 years ago. Now, what has happened in the last 3 years at our restaurant? 3 things has happened. Well, 4 big things have happened, really. 3 of them relates to cooking, and 1 of them relates to our restaurant, which I will just briefly say. And the 4th thing that I mention now as a sort of a offspring is, in the past 3 years, our service happened. We transformed our way of approaching how we deal with guests in our restaurant. And thus it transformed our entire team. And I'm only wanted to say this briefly here because it's something that I think we all need to think about for the future. I don't know how it is in Germany, but in Scandinavia, the service trade, waiters, are disappearing. We can't find anything anymore. Less and less so. So we need to do something. And we have done that at our restaurant, starting slowly to see if we can breathe in a new sense of pride and spirit into the service trade so that we again can have wonderful young people to choose from. Please be with us this, and I think these moments here where the whole trades are together, we should also focus on the service trade. We should focus on waiters, on sommeliers, and all the people that do that part of the job. Because even though we have good food, in the end, what creates the magic, I'm sure of this after the last 3 years, it's the service. It's the human connection. So please remember this. All right. Thank you. Okay, so since I was here last time I was here and I spoke a lot about how we had discovered our landscape, how our main job was to go to work every day and distill the day onto a plate. So whatever the nature gave us, whatever the weather conditions provided us, we would take all those efforts and distill them onto a plate. That was our biggest task. And for the first 5-6 years, we were on a discovery journey. It's insane how little we knew about our landscape. What is edible and what is not edible. It was even more insane how much we actually knew about our culinary traditions. Just insane. One funny factor about looking into our culinary traditions, I found out that in Denmark, most of our culinary traditions actually originates from Germany. So thank you for that. So in some strange way, the success of Noma, Germany has a seed of there somewhere. So in the last 3 years, we have delved into finding ways of preparing, cooking, expanding these ingredients in a new way. So the first 6 years was about mapping, finding them, getting familiar with them, finding each season, getting to cook with them in new ways. One of the things that we always had to do a lot was, of course, we had to think of the cold winter. I know you have the same problem most parts in Germany, but in Denmark we have 6 months of darkness. In northern Germany I would expect it's the same. Everything is frozen over. How do you cook when everything is covered in ice? Well, you can. And one of the things that we have developed incredibly since we started, since day one, but especially in the last 3 years, is also tapping into what Nadisawa talked about, is the wonderful world of fermentation. We're going to show some dishes where we introduce you to some of the new ideas of fermenting. Now, just to give you an idea about fermentation, because I believe that people don't quite understand just the potential there is in this world. It's the total new frontier. And as contemplating what this festival is called, the future is calling, well, I believe the future is calling for fermentations. Consider Jürgen Dolase over here. Consider Jürgen Dolase. His persona is the whole plant kingdom. Everything that grows in the world of plants, fruits, vegetables, mushrooms, is embodied in Jürgen Dolase. And now, everything else in this whole hall, everything else that we stand on, including everything else, that's the world of fermentation. That's the world of bacteria. That's the potential it has. If you consider what Jürgen Dolase embodies, from mushrooms, berries, plants, you name it, and then just consider the myriad of possibilities. And one of these bacteria, I'm going to mention the one that Narisawa spoke about when he talked about koji. Koji is made from a bacteria that's called the Aspergillus orsay, which is a wondrous little thing. We should all pray to this every night. Like Christian people that pray to Jesus, we as cooks should pray to the Aspergillus orsay, because that's the one that gave us soy sauce, miso, mirin, sake, and that's one. And in this room, it's as little as it's impossible to see. So we delved into that, and we have just discovered wondrous, and I truly believe me, wondrous new things. And it's adding new vocabularies to the cooking and to the chef trade. And I hope that one day that the cooking, you see, when I was a cook, don't eat this now, by the way. There's something being passed around. There's one for everybody. When I was a cook, one of my exam questions was, name soft-boiled eggs in 5 languages. Now, I only named 3, and I still passed. So why don't we replace that, silly questions like that, with understanding your landscape and about fermentation? The other thing that we discovered in the last 3 years is vegetables. Now, we've always worked a lot with vegetables. I've grown up in a very rural landscape in Macedonia, and if we wanted to eat meat, we had to slaughter one of our animals. I remember that it was very special when we had chicken, but it was also a bit sad because then the next day there was no eggs. So we grew up on vegetables. So in a sense, I've always been connected to it, that you eat stews, you eat lentils, you eat beans. But since we discovered in the way that we have in the past 3-4 years at Noma, where vegetables become more than a simple Gemüse, it can become the star of the show, it has also transformed our place. And suddenly, you have an array of flavors to work with that is unparalleled. Suddenly, winter doesn't seem so bad, even though there's 6 months of darkness. If you suddenly see the simplest root or the simplest onion as valuable as a piece of Wagyu steak. It's only the cooking, only the chefs that can create that difference. And now, the third thing that we discovered in the past 3 years, and something that we've been ridiculed about endlessly. And, well, let me take you back in time. So, the first time I discovered bugs as food, insects, I was in Mexico. It's many years ago. I was sitting in a restaurant, very traditional, and in front of me, the waiter served a pot, and it was steaming and bubbling away, and it looked like small grains of rice. And immediately I just dug right into it, but the way they popped in my mouth, I thought it was strange. And I asked, excuse me, why are these rice popping in my mouth with this liquid oozing out of them? And she said, well, this is because it's ant eggs. And immediately I was disgusted. I wanted physically to throw up. I didn't finish the plate of food. Today I regret this. And I regret that I look so stupid in front of these Mexican hosts. Almost as some sort of a too clever person. And then 3 years ago in Copenhagen, we had Alex Atala with us. Alex Atala, the famous Brazilian chef, who's transforming Latin America. And it was at a conference that's called MAD. And he stood in front of 400 people, much like today, and he put his 2 hands forward, And he said with the most wonderful, thick Brazilian accent, he said, "Why don't we eat insects?" Now, can you please ask yourself that question? Why don't we eat insects? Well, most people, they will say, well, that's disgusting. There's no real answer for it. Other than there's a cultural bias against it. Our culture says that it's disgusting to eat. Few people have actually tasted it. Well, let me rephrase. All of us in this room have tasted insects many times. If you eat a mushroom, you've eaten so many worms. I'm sorry. If you eat cabbage, you've eaten thick, fat, moist, wonderful jellified worms inside those leaves. And of course, the number one insect product that we all eat with delight is the vomit from a bee, honey. Think of that next time, that it's nectar processed through an insect and then it actually vomits out onto our toast in the morning. And it's kind of wonderful. We have the animal kingdom. We eat the same animals all the time. Everywhere you go, you get the steak from beef. Maybe you get pork. Maybe there's chicken, maybe there's lamb. If you're in Mexico City, if you're in Frankfurt, if you're in Copenhagen, you eat at one good restaurant, you're sure to have one of those meats. It's astonishing how much we eat of the same 5 animals. So there's the animal kingdom and then there's the plant kingdom. And now there's the kingdom in between, the bug kingdom. And we're going to show you a few things here, a few dishes about this. So, the first thing that we're going to do, just to start off gently, and then afterwards you're going to taste this, is that I'm going to show you a dish that, we should have the camera over here, please. Can you hold this? to my, yeah. I'm going to show you a dish of ferment. Now, this is the very, 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 very traditional flatbread. And I've always wanted to innovate on flatbread. Because it's the thing that's in every Danish home, in any Scandinavian home, you see flatbread. Is there ingredients? Is there like liverwurst in every German home? Yes? So this is in every Danish home, and people grow up with it. And it's very hard to serve at a restaurant because it's this everyday food that people eat all the time. Now, if you're going to serve it at a restaurant, you might as well make the best one ever. You have to do something with it that pushes tradition. Traditions are great as long as they're pushed all the time so they belong in its time. There's nothing more stupid than keeping hold of traditions just because it's a tradition. So then the fermentation came in. We took barley and grains and we inoculated them with mold. And it took 5-6 days and they were completely covered in mold. They grow sweet and umami rich. And from that we made a flour. And then we made a paste of would you mind dressing it? And then we made a paste of, a dough, a flatbread dough, which we brush with brown butter. That's also another staple. When you understand the tradition, flatbread used to be the poorest thing to eat. It was all food. Now, just by adding lots of richness, the ultimate luxury at a time when this was created, butter, and lots of it, you transform it as well. You also transform it in people's minds on how they appreciate it and how they actually eat it. Because it's flatbread, but it has this fermented goodness. It actually tastes a little bit of ham. We add brown butter, a brown butter emulsion, and then we thought, okay, how can we sort of put a little bit of poetry into this everyday life thing? So we sprinkle with wild thyme flowers, and then what we also do, and this is something that we discovered this year, and it's done wonders to us. We always took roses. These are wild roses. What do you call them in German? The hip roses.
Ja, Wildrose.
Yeah, Wildrose.
Heckenrose.
The wild roses that usually we put them in vinegar. We do things like that. And then Thomas, one day he's out by the barbecue and he decides to grill the roses. And I'm telling you, grilled roses is like, it's like eating a book, eating a good book. You know, there's so many things going on, and it just keeps continuing, these flowers. And then we just covered this thing in grilled roses. And we just served it like that. The thing that everybody has in their home, but somehow nudged. We pushed the tradition a bit through sort of the background knowledge that we gain over the years of studying the way we've done. Now the next thing I would like you to do...
Let me just... a degustation note.
Yes?
Für die Köche. Das schmeckt so, es hat eine Menge von den Röstaromen vom Brot her und von den Rosen her. Die Rosen sind zum Teil angeröstet. Wir haben also wirklich schwarze Röstaromen. Wir haben eine Menge Textur vom Untergrund. Die Rosen sind aber sehr lang. Und das, was auf das Brot gemacht ist, bringt die Verbindung, diese fermentierten Aromen, bringen die Verbindung zwischen den Röstaromen von dem Brot und den Rosen. Etwas, was wir in der puren Form vielleicht gar nicht mögen würden. In dieser verbundenen Form exzellenter Geschmack, sehr komplex, sehr intensiv, sehr fein. Thank you.
All right, for the next thing, I would like you to, can I see which sample you have? Do you have one or two samples? You have one. Okay, good. Can you open this, all of you, please? And then stick your finger in it. Does anybody have shellfish allergy? No? Good. Because it's not shellfish. All right. Now that people have tasted it, can we then play the first movie? And then you will see what you are having. All right. So, for how many of you was it the first time that you knowingly eat insects? Can we see the hands? Okay, pretty good. So, it says 6 weeks up there. What you're eating now is, in fact, 1 year old. And to a lot of people that taste it, they say that it tastes like something from Asia almost, like a mix between soy sauce, fish sauce, maybe even mole. You also have to remember this is a spice that we use. You had it quite intense and hardcore as it is. Now, imagine in the middle of February and it's minus 20 in Copenhagen, and the wind is so hard that it's slapping in your face like small dart arrows being thrown at you, and you basically hate life at that time, and you just want some little sunshine, and then you go to work, and in front of you is an onion, a carrot, and a cabbage. And you're like, okay, this has to be 3 dishes. Now, when you have these sort of cuisine, these sort of pillars for cuisine, cooking become much easier. Once we started taking away those blinders and actually see an ingredient for what there is, for the flavor, instead of the cultural bias, and maybe thinking sometimes that maybe we're the stupid ones here in the Western world. Maybe all the other 2 billion people that do this in their everyday life are the ones who actually know the best. we suddenly started tapping into these new flavors that helped us make better foods. One of the things that I'm going to show you now is this here. Now, this is the kelp. This is a aged seaweed and the grasshopper. And what better thing to do with this than to sprinkle it on a fish head and then barbecue it, which we've done here. Now, fish heads is not traditionally looked upon as something very glamorous. In fact, usually you see them in the trash can. And our fishmongers, they thought we were crazy when we said, can we please have 80 fish heads a day? Because usually you want the best of the best. But you know, some of the best meat, well, let me rephrase, the best meat is in the head, and especially right under the eye, and especially the eye. The eye is like the best part of the fish. You have no idea. So if you can close your eyes and one day eat one of those eyes without thinking that it's an eye, you will have the essence of that fish. It's amazing. So we grill that. This is a typical thing that we serve right now. We just serve it like this, almost barbaric. Let me see if I can just do it like this. Almost barbaric in the way that people simply just have to pick it up, eat it with their hands, and then we serve it with this here. Do you have the marinade?
Yeah.
We serve it with these. These are plants from the beaches, the wild beach plants. And one of these here is a type of a coriander that grows on the beach. One of these leaves here is one of the main reasons that Noma has become the ones we are today. This happened 6 or 7 years ago, no more, 8 years ago, and it was early spring. I was walking around on the beaches, and in Denmark we have not the best beaches. They're sort of filled with seaweed, there's rocks everywhere, and I was walking around and my feet were plunging in with my rubber boots, and it made the toilet plunges sound as I walked around, and there was flies everywhere, and I thought, what the hell am I doing here? And suddenly there was this green further away sprouting out of the seaweed, and I went over, and immediately you could see that it was a succulent. It looked like chives. It was disguised like chives, and I picked it up and I thought to myself, okay, right now I feel so miserable, so fuck it. I'm gonna eat it even though I don't know what it is. I will take the on-the-spot diarrhea if it happened to me, and that has happened to everybody more or less at the staff at Noma. You know, Thomas have horrible stories of diarrhea in the forest. So don't eat things that you don't know. But so I snap this leaf off, and I chew into it. And immediately the salty flavors, they burst into my mouth. And then the flavor comes. It hits you very strong. You're alone on the beach. It's coriander. Coriander, I thought to myself. I was like a little child. Coriander growing here, disguised as chives, through rotten seaweed on a shitty beach north of Copenhagen. This was incredible. I mean, could you imagine what it does to a cook? I had always traveled all around the world to experience coriander or gone to Thai restaurants. Suddenly it was there. I went home immediately, researched it, and it shows that it's an ingredient that's been growing 1,000 years. It's just the blindness that we've had in front of us. So we serve an array of all the wild beach succulents that we have here. There is beach mustard, all sorts of things, and we just simply put it like that.
Degustationsnotiz: Der Kopf schmeckt wie extrem glasiertes Material. Sie kennen den Geschmack von den Teilen, bis auf die Augen vielleicht. Es schmeckt wie sehr lange bearbeitet und sehr glasiert. Ein unglaublich feiner Geschmack. Auch sensorisch kommt das ohne Probleme rüber, dass die Fischstellen, die unterschiedlichen, ist auch was im Nacken, Kinn, Backen natürlich, kommen ohne weiteres durch. Der Kräuterstrauß soll abgebissen werden, also einfach in dieses kaum marinierte Material hineinbeißen, was einen enormen Flash von Kräutern und auch einen enormen Texturflash gibt. haben wir auch nicht in der klassischen Küche. Kommt hier aber ausgesprochen gut, vor allem in dem Kontrast mit dem gegarten Material. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so the next thing we're going to show you is, well, it's another idea of fermentation and preservation. So we're going into winter, and so, you know, all these ways of sort of extending ingredients. One of the things that this dish consists of is this little strange fella here. Can you see it here? Yeah. This is, what we do is that we grate horseradish and have the summer turnips, and then we cover them in salt. And they become extremely spicy, fermented, wonderful. And then we can chop it to this paste. We can have slices of it. But it's a wonderful way of adding spice and a hint of sort of summer during the winter period. One other thing that we have here, oh, you can go ahead. One other thing that we also have on the dish is the green leaves here. You see Thomas, he's dressing the plate. The green leaves that we soak in yeast. Now we take wild yeast, which in itself have preservation components, and then we burn it over a long time. The toasted flavor with the yeast is magnificent. Do you know the ingredient that's called Marmite? The English people, they eat it all the time, and in Australia they eat Vegemite. It's basically a paste that tastes very umami rich, and that paste is created out of yeast, because yeast is one of the biggest umami factors that we have.
Yeast,
naturally.
Hefe, für alle diese Hefe.
Hefe. So we basically soak these green leaves in the oil of the yeast, and it preserves them, and it also sort of lifts up their flavor, and it alters them. In some cases, it makes the ingredient better. I'll show you here what we do to it. Inside here now, we do many things with these leaves, but I can show you here. We have shrimps inside that we just fold over. And in the shrimps, they're marinated in a broth where we take the whole small fjord shrimps and we blend them. Mm-hmm. And then we steam that pulp. And the liquid that comes out of it is the pure essence. We overcook this mousseline with shells and everything. And then we basically cook it down and we marinate the shrimps in that. And then yeah, can I have it over here? That's fine, Thomas. And then what we do is that, can I have the vinegar? Then what we do is that we marinate it as well, these leaves, with a vinegar. This one here. Now this is also something that has boggled our mind. Vinegar. It's as old as time. You know, fermentation was the first type of cooking. It occurred even before mankind started to cook, when they found fire. Because fruit and apples and things, they would fall to the ground and the juices would release and they would ferment. And the animals would love that. So it's the first type of cooking. It dates way back to the beginning of humankind. And we haven't even discovered anything of it yet. Few of the things that we work with a lot, that all of us work with on an everyday basis, is the vinegars. Now, contemplate the vinegar. We're used to it having 2, 3, 4%, 5, 6. If you go to the north of Scandinavia, you might have vinegars that have 8, 9% vinegar, which is extremely, extremely vinegars. We work with a vinegar made from vine, sherry, and fruit, right? Most of the time. Most of the time, they're cooked with high acidities so that they last for years. Now, we started a program. We have like vinegars all over. We have a room where there's vinegars fermenting of all sorts of kinds, and you name it. If there's an ingredient, we try to make a vinegar of it. We make a wine, and then we make a vinegar. But the difference is that we try to have the low acidities in it. Enough to preserve the liquid that it tastes of. In this case, it's pine or Christmas tree, to some of you that don't know what pine is. And you see, it's kept its color. Totally green, and it's even a bit viscous. So once you start playing around with these fermentations and don't see the sort of the traditional, that they have to keep a certain element of acidity in order to last, these vinegars would only last us 6 months. But that's enough. It's fresh vinegars. It's a new vinegar. We don't even have a word for it. Fresh vinegar. So we have a broth that we pour over the green leaves with a few of the beech flowers, the last one of the season. And then we pour on the same broth that we aged the leaves in with a bit of the vinegar. That is the third dish we have for you.
Degustationsnotiz dazu. Eine kleine kochtechnische Sache, wenn Sie sich wundern, wie diese Ravioli zusammenhalten. Die blanchierten Blätter sind einfach drüber gelegt, die sind nicht zusammengeklebt, großartig. Die Degustation, ich muss jetzt mal was sagen, er versteht es ja nicht, nicht alles. Das ist eines der Gerichte, die im Moment einen riesigen Fortschritt in Noma markieren für meine Begriffe. Ja. Es ist so extrem fein und ausgebufft im Geschmack, dass wir diese dämliche Frage, die manchmal gestellt wurde, ist René Redzepi, sagen wir mal, so ein guter Koch wie andere 3-Sterne-Köche? Dass diese Frage irgendwie sinnlos wird. Eine der Sachen, die sich in den letzten 3 Jahren ergeben haben, ist, dass die Finesse in der Küche des Noma enorm zugenommen hat. Man arbeitet eben auch schon jahrelang daran. Und das hat bei diesem Reflexionsgrad enorme Folgen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next dish, vegetables. Sort of the new frontier. It was interesting. I don't know if you followed the discussion about the fake meat that was created in a lab. Did everybody hear about this? Yeah, most of you heard about it. But for those of you who didn't hear about it, they are now started to produce meat in laboratories. They can actually grow the protein. And then they color it with beet. There's no fat. They color it with beet so that it looks like meat. And one of the comments, when it took $1 million to produce 2 hamburgers, and the best comment when the 4 people that tasted it was, it's almost meat. I love that. So it's just, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm reading these stories in all the magazines and, you know, I mean, yes, meat is going to be very expensive. Everybody knows this. And if you don't know it, well, get ready for it. Meat is going to be very, very, very expensive for the future. We're going to have to learn to cook other things. Maybe vegetables could be one of them. Or maybe we will start cooking meat that's grown in a laboratory. I don't know. Anyway, we sort of think that vegetables have a wonderful future in cooking. And I'll tell you a story which I've talked about before, but it was a huge transformation for us. And maybe I even brought it last time I was here. It's the idea of the vintage carrot or vintage ingredients. So again, all this comes out of desperation. Another cold winter. Another winter where we're not prepared. Another time when we're waiting for spring and we have no more ingredients, but the guests, they keep coming back and we have to excite them with new flavors. And we didn't have anything more to cook. And I called up the farmer and I said, "Dear farmer son, send us everything you got." And back then he said, "But René, I only have these shitty carrots. And they're 2 years old." They had been in the ground for 2 years, and then he had taken them up, and they had been in his storage room because he's a mess and he forgets about things. And it had been there from he harvested them in summer on to February. And I said, "Doesn't matter, give it to us." And he came and he brought them to us, and they were really shitty carrots at first. You could make a circle with it. But then we thought, okay, there's nothing to lose. Nobody's going to taste it but us. why don't we try to look at this little ingredient not like a shitty carrot? What would happen if we looked at it like it's the most expensive piece of meat we know? Like it's a prized truffle, or it's a piece of Wagyu steak that's 200 euros for 500 grams. And that's what we did. We simply attacked this, not noticing its value, how much we paid for it. Just trying to look at it as something that it was precious, that had been saved for us. And we cooked it in the pan, and we basted and we turned it like you would do when you cook a piece of meat. You add butter, you add spices, you keep twisting and turning, and you take care of it. And you know, the young cooks, they were touching their fingers to see what type of doneness. When was it ready? When was it medium? And it took almost 2 hours to cook this little thing. And what happened in those 2 hours is, of course, a transformation. So the skin was leathery, crunchy, and it had shriveled in. All the water evaporated. This starchy, mealy texture was gone. And as we cut into it, it sort of oozed out with the most intense carrot puree you could imagine. It was just the carrot steak, and the vintage carrot was born. So that was a positive change for us when we started really delving into what are the possibilities of the most simplest things, as long as we sort of change our sort of mostly value perspective of it. And one of them is the beet. As a Danish person, you grow up with beets. You have beets in Germany, right? Do you put them on your liver? Wurst? Or what's the liver paste? The liver paste. You put them on liver paste, right? We do the same in Denmark. Usually you have them in a jar, and you take them up out of a liquid, and kids, they hate beets. And when they're raw, they're sort of horrible. Okay, so we tried to work with the beets. And so what we did is that we twist and we turn it in the oven as we cook it. It's kind of hard to see the differences of cooking. What if we do like this? Yeah, it's a little better. So this is cooked 1 hour. 2 hours. 3 hours. And as you see, it's been charred on the outside. And this is the peeled version of it. And what we do is then that we cut around it like this. And then you have the most insane, fragrant, leathery, powerful beet that you can possibly imagine. Suddenly the beet has everything that you look for in a meal, the richness of flavor. It's beyond a vegetable. This one here, the centerpiece, which is lovely and smoked, we actually brush with the birch syrup, and then we dry it further, and it looks like licorice, and we serve it for petit four with the coffee. So it's 100% yield of this. And what we do is that what we do with this dish is that we then spice it up. We have the sort of the finished dressed dish here, is that we spice this dish up with other preservations. Spicy seeds from various flowers. It can vary what we put here. All the wildflowers. This was positively also a revolution to us. I have never thought of Denmark as a spicy nation. I would assume it's the same here in Germany, right? Spices are not really something that you consider to be Northern European, at least not Protestant. And but once you start actually tasting all the seeds from all the flowers that grows here, some of the roots even, you will find a new array of spices. Spices that you taste, that taste like cumin, that taste like cinnamon. You can't imagine what's out there to be found. So we have all these array of spices. Some have been pickled and cured. Here we have salted berries, unripe berries that turn almost olive-like. And this is another seed that we dry. It turns almost into pepper. And then a few of the last fresh ingredients of the season. Then we make a broth out of these two here. Each time when it's a wonderful cep season, we also process ceps. No, don't just dry them. This is a lactic fermentation. You know sauerkraut? This is sauerkraut made from ceps. Exactly the same process as sauerkraut. We just replaced all the cheap cabbage with very expensive and hard to find ceps when they're high in the season. And now when you have, after a month or two of this fermentation and you squeeze out the liquid, you have the most potent mushroom, acidic, like broth handed down from the gods to you. We have this. We mix it with berries as well. We also make sauerkraut of every possible berry you can imagine. It is also an extreme transformation. For you to have these flavors during winter is just insane. Now, this is red currant, the juice of that. And during winter, if you splash an oyster with this, which there's high season, it's almost there. You don't need to do much of it. And we sort of sprinkle it onto this leathery beet, and we pour on the broth.
Eine Degustationsnotiz dazu. Wir haben also diesen Effekt einer Art Vinaigrette vom Geschmack her, der auf rote Beetestücke von verschiedenen Garungs- und Fermentierungsstufen trifft. Es gibt schon mal eine große Komplexität. Wir haben mehr rote Beete als jemals zuvor. Dazu kommt diese Unzahl von kleinen Elementen, die natürlich über die Saison variieren, die man aber bis zum Winter auch bei uns ernten könnte. Und Sie sehen, dass die Anzahl der Variablen bei diesem Teller ungeheuer groß wird. Auch das ein Zeichen dieser neuen Finesse, die die Küche im Noma erreicht hat. Thank you.
All right, do you have a new sampling thing in front of you? Okay, I can see there's quite a bit in it. The first flavor you take a little bit. It's quite strong. You can eat it all, nothing will happen. And again, is there any shellfish allergies? Good, because it's not shellfish. Have you had a flavor of it, a taste of it? Yeah. Can we play the second movie? Now you'll see what you're eating. Can we have a look at the screen? This is Thomas Friebel's hand.
So schwierig.
What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, one's better than my nipple.
We'll see it again. I'm sure you've all harvested a carrot before. This is how you harvest ants. Believe it or not. Usually we wear gloves.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, you can stop the movie now, please. So this particular ant that Thomas is harvest, we use about 10 kilos? 10 kilos a year of. What you're having there is the paste of that. Simply blended. There's nothing in it. And this is sort of our way in our cuisine in the cold north to have this fruity acidity. No, we freeze it. We freeze it. It was asked if we blend it alive. We could have done that, but we freeze it. We freeze it and then we blend it, and you could also crush it to a paste. And so this is one of our ways to have an extremely potent and very, 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 very powerful fruity acidity. Because what we work with a lot is all these vinegary acidities. We don't have the acidities. I usually call them alive acidities, which is lemon, citrus fruit. This is our way of exploiting that. Although if you were to taste a lemon with the ant, the lemon would taste of nothing. It's kind of hard to imagine. It's like sometimes when you taste wine and you have it once against each other. The first one tastes really good, and then you taste the second one is much stronger, and then the first one tastes of nothing. It's the same thing here. It's so strong that lemons become even less. So this is one variety of ant. We have two others that we also work with. The one tastes explosively strong of a mixture between lovage and lemongrass. Like explosively strong, 100% native to our area. And then another one tastes explosively strong of coriander as well. So we actually found two ways of putting all these spices into a food. What Thomas is doing here is he's making a dessert of the ants. This idea that the berry is from a forest, and you try to sort of be inspired by its nearby surroundings. A technique that we used since we opened 10 years ago. And then, we thought that we were over this technique until we, of course, found the ants, because suddenly we had one more ingredients from its natural environment to put onto the plate. So we use these pastes as a spice. This is not supposed to be a dish in itself. And, I mean, even though you've had a few samples of these things, this is not what defines our restaurant these days. It's just things that we see great flavor in and huge, huge, huge unexploited potential. It's only our imagination that sort of have the limitation right now. So what we do is that we thought, since we're doing a dessert of ants, we would put it in a very comforting surrounding, a sandwich, something that we've all had in between our hands. And it does work. When we tell them it's a dessert of blueberries and ants, and they sort of get the sandwich in between their hands, it's a sort of moment of comfort, so they're not afraid. And we also, let me see here, and then we actually serve a jam of the ants with blueberries that's folded into the leaves. So as you eat your sandwich, you also pop in the leaves. Thank you very much.
Die Degustationsnotiz dazu, Sie kennen vielleicht das, was ich Crossover-Desserts genannt habe, was zum Beispiel Christian Hüms im La Mer so gut macht. Das ist schon wieder eine Stufe weiter hier. Es ist eine Form von Dessert und Desserteindruck, wie Sie ihn möglicherweise noch nie gegessen haben. Es ist also eine Mischung aus einem wunderbar feinen, leicht säurehaltigen Süße und eine Art Bio-Anmutung, die Sie vom Brot kriegen, auch von den Kräutern. Und es schmeckt komplett anders als alles, was Sie je gegessen haben, und hochfein. Thank you.
I forgot one thing. I was going to finish now, but I actually forgot about this one. This is sort of came out of a reaction. Well, you know, in Denmark we're 5 million people, and we produce 26 million pigs every year. That's a lot of fucking pigs. I mean, you're 90 million people in Germany. Now imagine the multiplication of pigs if you were to grow that here. It's an insane amount of pigs. So what do we do with these pigs? You ask yourself as a cook. What sort of traditional recipes do we have? Do we have the best hams in the world? Do we have 1,000 different pig recipes since we're producing so much? No. We really don't, huh? It's kind of mind-boggling to think of that we produce so much of it and we haven't cooked it. We haven't found ways of processing it. So we thought, okay, as a sort of a salute to all the pig shit around the Danish countrysides, and as a salute to how unimaginable that we've been with our food for so long, we would do a thing for the coffee with the pig skin. So this is the pig skin, and we basically just covered it in milk chocolate and spices, and then you eat it with your coffee.
Auch das schmeckt durch die Kombination der Zutaten obendrauf, es schmeckt einen Tick nach Schwein, aber genau diesen Tick nach Schwein, den man hat, um die Assoziationen anzuschalten. Und dann kommt der Geschmack mit der Schokolade und so weiter. Und Sie haben das Gefühl, Sie sind ganz wunderbar in einer wunderbaren Dessertwelt.
Thank you.
That's it. Vielen Dank für die Vorführung.